Hello, my name is Ethan, and welcome back to another episode of Path of Exile, Delirium League. In this episode, 3.10, we're going to do... Well, hello guys, good morning, how you guys doing? Today we're going to do, prioritizing upgrades and how you, upgrade. But first, before we do that, we must go down to a fundamental level of the build. So this was the league start. My advice for this is actually, so in hindsight, I would have not done this res to socket, and I would have taken the elemental res for the minions here. Maybe keep the fizz damage reduction, but whatever, take that off, and we would path to Ravenous Horde. Pretty much other than that, this is a fine skill tree. I think this was a pretty good league start skill tree, and you can use this with a 6-link Skelly and basically clear tier 1 Blight if you have this, because if you look, you're getting 100,000 DPS per Skelly. You just gotta have them all leveled up, you know. This should probably clear T1. You're going to have trouble with your own survivability, and that's where you use instant life flasks. And this is without even a build. Like this, you don't even have a build here, dude. It's just a 6-link. So this is how a 6-link league start can let you farm really high tier stuff, and then you use this core to make currency to fund a more expensive build. So now I'll start to show you how you would upgrade from the league start being poor as fuck, just using a 6-link of gems, upgrading to a real build. Okay, so next. So just to make this clear, this league start is basically assuming no currency, and this is your skill tree, and you have no jewel sockets, and you have no items, and it's basically a 6-link. Okay. And then you're using, in this case, it was War Banner, Pride, Generosity. The Generosity was for the War Banner. Yeah. Very simple. Then I have this one, which I put out as a, hypothetical endgame build guide. Hey, this might be pretty good from what we've seen in the past seasons. Just fill out the rest with things you might need. Because it was 1,000 strength. It had 300,000... damage per zombie, which is enough to do T13, and it was just lacking in a few areas. It didn't have a belt, 2 rings, 3 jewels, and this was just showing how you would take a build and add a staff, and now you can do nearly T13 Blight, all just with a weapon and the 1,000 strength. So you would ask me, Ethan, how did you go from league start to this? Okay, so this is, again, to clarify now. So let me just fix the skill tree a little to what I recommended in the other one, right? At this point, we're assuming, so you don't path up here anymore. You change it to this pathing, and you get, and you anoint Death Attunement on the amulet. Okay, so this will look different than... obviously, I had recommended previously, and I'm going to change this to Pride, probably, just because of consistency, because that's what I had in the first place. Okay. It's funny that I had used some of the... Okay, so, I guess I was trying to get the damage with minimal... Yeah, so anyways, the first thing I would recommend in this build from the league start to this is anointing Death Attunement to save 7 points. Okay, this should be fixed, my bad. You can path down to Utmost Might now, so that you can actually get your strength. You have to use... probably 3 efficient trainings in these spots, because you have these spots pathed already, and you can just take the jewel sockets. The items, I highly recommend Sackawalls. You could get a Sackawalls before you get the weapon, to be honest. You could just use a 6-link and add a Sackawalls. The reason for the Sackawalls is the reduced mana reserve, and then it makes Avian actually good, and then you can get Avian on any random item. And what I mean by that, because people always ask, Avian can be added to any item. Just buy the monster. It's called Sakawal, First of the Sky. There's an apostrophe, don't forget about it. You could also just search First of the Sky, or you can search Sakawal. You just fight the Sakawal, and add it to any rare item as a suffix. So as long as your item has an open suffix, you can add Avian. So once you get Sakawal's Nest in the build, it doesn't matter about the link. You don't need a big link. You could just shittily link your zombies while you abuse skeletons, okay? So anyways, Sakawals, I recommend. You don't need Grip of the Council gloves. These were recommended, but you don't need them, especially if we're not going the Hatred variant. So this is just with a normally rolled Astromantis, 18% increased strength, Alberons, Sakawals, the Baron, which in this case still had strength, so you would actually need to get strength on your glove or one of your rings or your belt in this case, or one of these jewel sockets that I have open. You have to get a little bit more because you're going to be missing some strength from the helmet. But basically what I'm trying to show here is you after the league start, the next best thing I recommend is anointing, death attunements. You have more points to take the other stuff for strength stacking, right? You strength stack, you get your strength to 1,000 with your Baron and all of these items, and now with the Baron, your zombies leech for you. Now zombies are actually useful in helping you to AFK, so that you might get to a point now with this 1,000 strength where just summoning skeletons is enough to kill the lanes, and then you survive with the zombies. Or as soon as you get the weapon, which basically after the 1,000 strength, it's the next thing I recommend. You can keep farming with the skeletons. You should keep farming with the skeletons until you can afford this weapon. This is the turning point of the build, guys. So what I did is I farmed T1 and T3 Blight for 14 hours trying to 6-link my weapon. Because I dropped the weapon from the map, which was a 1x drop, then I annulled, which turned it into a 3x drop, then I had to protect the prefixes, scour the suffixes, that's another 2x, 5x, then I started crafting the fusings, did 3,800 fusings. It was a nightmare, dude. And then I still had to get all the unveils and then craft the stuff onto it. And so it was about like 20x later, and we finally had the staff. And then the staff allowed me to AFK tier 1 and T3 Blight fully at this point, because my life was really shitty, but my damage was pretty good. It was pretty much what we showed with the POB, and I was like, oh my god, it's so easy, because I didn't even have the gems either. So in here I'm showing like awaken minion damage, awaken melee fizz. I didn't have these. Having an empower as soon as you get the weapon too is very unlikely. So yeah, you can't just get the weapon and go to T13 Blight. You also need all this stuff. And so basically what I'm saying is, what I recommend is you come into the game, you have gems, you get a 6-link, and you have your gems, and you can farm very low Blight while you have to actively press flash. You might still die if you mess up, and you have to fully clear with skeletons for hours and hours. There's no AFKing until you can afford it. And then when you can afford it, you afford the strength stacking. So I recommend all the 1,000 strength. That's the first upgrade. The next upgrade I recommend is directly to one of the weapons. And now this is for people. The weapon I recommend right now. So what I think should stay the cheapest and you should get is a +1 to level of socketed gems. Socketed gems are supported by Fortify. Can have up to 3 crafted modifiers, +2 level of socketed support gems, minion attack and cast speed, and then maybe Avian as the suffix. Doesn't matter about the implicit, don't worry about it. Just get Fortify +1 and go go ham. It's going to be really good. You're going to like it a lot. It's going to be way cheaper. You could even go for just minion damage, 100%, with no chance to deal double damage if that's cheap too. Those are the two I recommend. Do not go for the staff. It's too expensive. Don't go for socketed skills, deal 20% more attack damage. Those are min-max. I'm trying to min-max. Okay. So you don't need the staff. I should actually I'll go get the Fortify and show it in the build, because that's what we're actually building with, so one sec. Okay, so this was an easy 12x, add it to the build, 189, so it is less, because the way to explain it is, in the early game, you don't have a lot of minion damage, so flat minion damage is really helpful, whereas Fortify is a % more multiplier, so you need base damage to have more. So Elegant Hubris would make a big difference in this spot. Okay, so now you guys will ask the question, Ethan, what do we upgrade from this spot now that we can AFK T1 and T3? What do we do with all this farming with the currency after? So what I would recommend is obviously squaring up all the things that you're missing. Maybe help your strength in ways that isn't these jewels, because okay, so basically I'm going to explain things that you are going to want to put in the build based on our main build now, that how do you fit them in and how do you transition and what is the order that you want to do it. So basically I've recommended you up to this point getting the 1000 strength and getting the weapon. Okay. Now, we're gonna have to go through and compare to our actual build. Okay, so this is gonna get a bit confusing, I think, but it'll work. So, here's our actual build, right? This is our thing. We have Death Attunement allocated. I could add that to Miami in my current, but basically, what is the order that I recommend to get upgrades in the build now? So most of the time, everyone's complaints are going to be about damage. I think so. What do I recommend once they get the staff? Well, let me go back to the other build. So, let's say you got the staff, and so I should reduce these back to, this should be minion damage instead of, well, brutality, because now we recommend that instead. There's a lot of stuff we learned, so this should be melee fizz, and this would be like an empower 3 to go budget. Okay, so there you go. And also you have to take off intimidate. Okay. So now the one of the things we learned is I would probably rework this. So like pride, we'd probably you'd leave that until you get the other thing. You don't have your animate guardian yet. You probably would do this if you wanted to go budget, just to show a budget version. We don't use this anymore. So I still recommend keeping it like this, because you're not going to be able to afford the Enlightened 4, and you're not going to be able to afford all those auras. I still recommend these. This is still good until you can afford the Animate Guardian, and the Animate Guardian might be hard to fit in the build. But would I already value it enough now? So anyways, this is what I'm saying. So you take out Feeding Frenzy, and you would put in minion impale. So two hundred and something K, yeah. Look at minion damage. Whoops. 208. So don't fuck impale. Okay, so you continue to not use impale. You have minion damage, but we don't run Feeding Frenzy anymore in our current build. You can if you want to, but you can push more damage, and this is like budget friendly and league start friendly and trying to get you more damage. So also we don't run Animate Guardian yet. So okay, so there's two setups I'd recommend. For active playing, I'd recommend the Cyclone setup, but for this, I'm gonna recommend a level 1 cast from damage taken setup. And the reason is just like always. You cast some damage taken, and then you do a Mortal Call, and you do that level 3, and you go get your Frost Wall. This is for trying to get early AFKing Blight done. We're gonna try to do that again in a sense. Add back the Bone Offering, get the Bone Offering in the build. Okay, so all this is really gonna help you for AFKing. If you don't know about this, we can have these 4 in the same thing, just don't have it linked. And then you still have an entire 6 link, I'm pretty sure. So you can still fit skeletons in the build at this point if you wanted to with the weapon. Yeah, the 6 link chestplate's still a thing because we don't have any gems taken up by the phase run. You don't really need the phase run. You can just flame dash around. But I recommend this for AFKing Blight. If you don't want to AFK Blight, then the setup would be Cyclone, cast while channeling, Desecrate, Spirit Offering, Bone Offering, and the order matters a little bit, so you just have to have Desecrate come before Bone Offering in the links. Okay, so then so I just had to get the basis, like the what we're using set up correctly so that this makes more sense. Okay, so now what would I recommend first? Because this is a tough decision, because whatever I decide, it's like kind of based on price, and the price changes on shit, so whatever. I'll talk about the first one. So the first one, I think, that's easiest for everybody, that should stay kind of cheap, is if you can fit in a Thread of Hope. It doesn't need to be 1% reduced mana reserve. The only reason you need this is if you try to copy my Flesh and Stone 5 link aura setup in my chestplate with using Flesh and Stone and Maim. But if you listen to this video, it will make sense. I hope people follow this video. So the first thing I would recommend is a Thread of Hope medium. Why medium? So that the green ring touches Cruel Preparation and Ravenous Horde. Do you see that? Then with this, you're allowed to allocate these without pathing to them. So instead of spending 7 points to get Ravenous Horde, you get it in 1. Same thing here, instead of 3 points, you get it in 1. So we get Cruel Prep and Ravenous Horde. I anointed them through the Ami. People have asked me this question of how do you do it. I just took the Ami, right here. I double click, I edit, and then I copied Allocate's Death Attunement, put it here, and changed it to Ravenous Horde and Cruel Prep, because the names are on the skill tree, so I just wrote it down. Okay, so that's how I did that. It doesn't spend the extra 2 points, but I just have to remember that I spent 2 there, and then it allocates them so we can see what they do. Awesome. So that's awesome, that's fun. That's what I did there, and so just putting in a medium Thread of Hope with the negative res jewel will save us 6 points here and 2 points here. It's 8 points to use on our skill tree. What can we do with 8 points, you may ask? A lot. But the first thing is, obviously, it gets us the things we want on the skill tree and frees up 8. You could put it into more life, you could put it into things that you want, pathing down into more strength, etc. And then what would I recommend next? So that was one of the easy things, right? Just get an easy Thread of Hope. Okay. The other one would be, what people may ask, when do you add impale to the build for big damage, Ethan? Well, the impale setup is dependent on this cluster jewel. What do you have to do for this cluster jewel? It's an 8 passive. You have to get an 8 passive. 8 passive. Added small passive skills grant minion deal 10% increased damage. Get that too. It has to have, okay, listening, it has to have Rotten Claws and Vicious Bite. Those are the 2 added passive skills, Rotten Claws, Vicious Bite, that you need. You want 2 jewel clusters. You should get these. You don't need the Feasting Fiends. The Feasting Fiends can be any mod technically, but you would rather it be something useful. And at the time when I got this, I think it was 4x. So, like, to get a jewel like this, it was 4x. So that's what I'm thinking it is. If it's changed, well, I don't know. But either way, this jewel isn't as expensive as people may think, especially when you compare it to the weapon. It could actually be that the you should be going for this cluster jewel before the weapon, technically. But I love the weapon and I love my zombies, and there's so much more that the weapon does than just damage, where this is like pure damage. Okay, so Rotting Claws, Vicious Bite, and it gets you 2 jewels. Now don't worry about the jewels yet, okay? But know that you have to get this 8 passive 2 jewel socket. Yeah. So when you get this and you have your Vicious Bite and Rotting Claws, what does this do? That's what you may be asking. Vicious Bite is big damage. Look at that. Big damage. Okay. What is Rotting Claws? Chance to impale. So it's also big damage, but for a different reason. So this is where I say, hey, if you get this Rotting Claws thing, this is where the build changes heavily. So can I take this jewel and like put it in the other one? How do I, 1 sec. Okay, so I took the large cluster jewel and pasted it into this thing. It's unused. Let's show my skill tree a little. So like I said, imagine you did the Thread of Hope thing up here, and you get your strength through a ring, a belt, or the glove, and your reses, yeah, trust me, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you how to do those. Okay, so anyways, let's say this is a Thread of Hope now, so we should probably add that too. Doesn't matter, don't care. Is it this one, this one, this one? There we go, fixed. So our reses are even more fucked up, but that's fine because res is easy. And then you're able to have these allocated on the thing. So we have 3 things we can allocate now. Okay, so we could go fix that too. Okay, so then look what I would do. You take this, and from my other one, I could just take these 3 crafted allocated passives and boom, add it to this so they get allocated. You can see it now on the skill tree. It looks a lot better. You see your medium Thread of Hope. You have your -15. Just start getting this into perspective. You have your extra points saved again. Okay, so then this is where you wanted to take this jewel cluster, and this jewel cluster, what it does for you is allows you to also, we could probably have taken this. I don't know why that wasn't taken, but okay, this large cluster jewel allows you to do the big thing. So you would put in your big cluster jewel. You would allocate all the things, right? You see your damage goes up 250, 276. What is this damage? You have 2 jewel sockets. What would you do in these, Ethan? What are you doing? Well, for now, you could just put in a Fortress Covenant because they're really cheap and they're actually really good. And you could also get Quickening Covenant. I always recommend these. They're basically a jewel socket that's better than the skill tree, and it makes no sense because it's okay, whatever. It usually has downsides, but look, when you socket them in here, their downside gets deleted. This is a bug. Or intended, whatever. Either way, they're supposed to transform all the notables in the area to bad things with 20% increased minion damage taken, but instead they just stay the same. So you get this crazy jewel cluster that's equivalent to like, look at that damage. Look at that damage. Okay, so yeah, this jewel cluster, 7 points plus the 3 for allocating it, and you ask, okay, what would you take out? These 4 points because you have to use a minion skill to get the damage. If you notice, it says minions deal damage if you used a minion skill. Fuck that. Hate it. How many points? You're only at level 88 right now. It's actually not even that bad, dude. It's not even that bad. And you still have an extra jewel socket. You also don't need this, but we'll keep it. Okay, so then the point is, you would only have needed to get 80 strength through 4 items, which is like ridiculous, and 2 jewel sockets where you could use a brawn if we wanted. We could be using a brawn this whole time. I'll just take a randomly rolled except 4 strength. Okay, let's add that to the build. Let's put that here. Put that here. Okay, so then this shows you 1000 strength again with the extra 2 jewel sockets we had. So we still have it. We pulled up the damage quite a bit, which is really juicy. Now you may ask, okay, then you got this jewel socket in. What does this actually do? Yeah, this is just the beginning. So raise zombie, you would take out minion damage, and you would put in the impale. So 288 lowers your damage, but the impale is going up. Okay, so impale is cool. And your war banner turns into a dread banner. So you can see we got more damage. More damage. And then impale does more damage to like through bosses, like overall. Yeah, 309 now. It's pretty juicy. Then you can also, so that jewel enables impale by giving us chance to impale, and we also then get let me show, raise zombie. Oh, they're doing all physical, and where's their impale? 95%. It's pretty insane. It's pretty goddamn insane. 95% chance to impale, all because of this jewel cluster that we didn't have last season. So imagine their chance to impale being a lot lower. They had to hit a lot more. But yeah, 309k. This is already T13 viable, just by getting the jewel cluster, for example. And then it's funny how then you add 1 zombie level, you get your Empower 4. You're pushing 375k DPS with Impale. If you went to Awakened melee phase and you get your extra Intimidate. So this is showing you order of upgrades. Are you seeing the damage we're pumping out? The Elegant Hubris in the build actually only adds minion life in mine. I don't use it for base damage anymore. This is with the normal Fortify weapon, by the way, too. We're putting out 426,000 DPS because of the jewel socket, the level on our zombie with the Empower and the Raise zombie. Okay, so, and the Awaken melee fizz. Okay, so in this spot, what would you do next? Well, actually, there's this amulet that I just made that's not that expensive. Let me show you guys. We could start using it in the build. One sec. So yeah, I made this video about how to make a +1 zombie, +1 int. It doesn't copy correctly, so it's obviously a rare item. It's not a unique, but anyways, I crafted this +1 zombie, +1 int. It's a Awakener orb combination. It's a guaranteed combo, and then you just need 1 suffix and you multi to have strength and life. And then I obviously added the extra allocates. So this, if you notice, let me compare it to the Astromantis again. So it's a little bit less on the strength and stuff, obviously. But then when you add it in, it's 40k more damage, 40,000 more per zombie, and an extra zombie, getting us to 13. It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. From the other one being 12, it added an extra zombie. Okay, and then yeah, 1000 strength. Also, I think this is still using the old Baron, that's why it's giving me so many zombies. Yeah, I should probably fix that too. But the next thing I could recommend is going for a +1 zombie Ami is basically what I'm saying. If you want to replace the Astromantis, you can do that. So I think you're starting to notice how as we make upgrades in the build, we can increase the damage and what upgrade makes each change. And so we have to keep transitioning this to how do we get it to the point of your build, Ethan? Or is there even a full point? Like, how do we get 10 million damage? Okay, so we keep going. The Elegant Hubris thing would get the minion life up. So right now, for example, this minion in this build only has 35,000 health. In my build, I have 90,000 health on the zombies. So how, like, you would need to get the Elegant Hubris in the build. And so what would you do next? Okay, so you have all this damage. You can do T13. You just need a little bit more life. how would you get survivability now, or is it worth it? Okay, so let's compare back to my build. Is this where we could tone back on some damage? So imagine you take out this, you were able to take out this because you got your res somewhere else, and instead you're able to take this life, and maybe some of this, you know? Just start taking more life. Technically you're only 89 here, so let's start utilizing all these extra points, you know? We'll assume like 90, 95. Let's take one out. Okay. Obviously, one extra point here is worth more. Should probably take that. Okay. So you could get 5,600, and that's still without rings and belt, and you could get your strength up, and this was with 400,000, so you could start to see how you could get your life. Obviously, reses and chaos res are all messed up because you don't have rings or a belt or a glove. I don't really want to show where to, like, people are going to get different items, and I'm not going to tell them, get 35 chaos on one ring, but 0 on the other. Like, I'm not going to make people all go for one specific item so that it goes and messes up the market. So then I'll show you how you would upgrade even further. So imagine you would want, you definitely want, so you see all this, you'd want to max out the build. So how do you max out the build? You need Awaken Brutality in this spot. How do you max out Multistrike? You need Awaken Multistrike. How do you make your raised zombie better? You get 1 extra level. This is where, like, what, at a certain point, the upgrades are going to start to seem really dumb, and it's like, well, which order matters the most? Well, mostly the part of up to this point it really mattered, and at this point you just need to start squaring up the things and getting all the upgrades, and they start to get really expensive, and I can't do anything about the price of these items, guys. All we can do is explain the order, I guess. So the basic thing that we've learned from this video up to this point is strength stack to 1,000, get the weapon, from the weapon, get a raise zombie 21 and empower 3. With that, you then can get a thread of hope to save skill points. You can use the skill points and get the large cluster jewel with the rotting claws and the vicious bite. With the 2 jewel sockets, you get to use these cool jewels, or you can put in some small cluster jewels if you feel like you want to, and copy the up-to-date build if you want. Okay, so then but these are like super recommended for big damage, really cheap. So then you can, like I said, get an Elegant Hubris in the build in this spot or this spot, depending, to get minion life, to get the minion life up, or minion damage, because your minion damage might be low. And I also outlined that once you get the jewel, once you get this cluster jewel and you have the running claws, you can switch to impale, and switching to impale is getting rid of minion damage, adding impale, and switching to dread banner instead of war banner. And then you have this impale thing where you deal like true damage. And then to get this up, you go with the raised zombie gems, you can go for the awakens, you can go, so where you're going to get the big damage now, like the final damage in the build, would be maybe an insane Elegant Hubris with a lot of damage and life. You're going to get it from the cluster jewel, you're going to get it from the actual zombie gems, the auras, and then, like I pointed out, in our actual build, I run a 5-link aura setup, so this, with the purity of, oh wait, it's separate. So the pride is with the purity of elements. So let's just, I run a 5-link. So let's say pride, and then you run, this is, I'll just show you how it's done. So flesh and stone, maim, and it's kind of expensive. So let me explain. Enlighten, 4. This is the mana reserve setup. So you need a 5-link of these. You can see your mana gets messed up. So this is with Aspect of the Avian, a 5-link. And then the Dread Banner, Awaken Generosity. You have these on the skill tree. Oh, this mana reserve. So 4, 4, 6. And then the problem comes in that you don't have enough mana. Why is that? This is with a 10% Soccer Walls, so 10% reduced mana reserve Soccer Walls. Why can't you do it? You need, as you see, you have -3. You need 4 jewels with 1% reduced mana reserve. So you can get 1% reduced mana reserve Quickening Covenant, Fortress Covenant, random jewels to put in here. It doesn't actually need to be these. It doesn't need to be good stuff. It's just get your stuff. So you could get like shitty jewels just to get the reduced mana. I'm just showing you how stupid this is. You have to get 4, guys. It's not easy. 4 1% reduced mana reservation corruptions on jewels, and then you can finally fit in the Mim and the Flesh and Stone. So it's a very big min-max where you have to have a 5-link Soccer Walls, 3 red, 2 blue, just so basically showing that, sure, it does add a lot more damage. Look at how much Flesh and Stone adds to the build, dude. 70k and then 150 DPS impale. That's a lot. But look at how much extra work it added to the build. It adds Flesh and Stone, Maim, Enlighten, and you have to get ridiculously expensive min-max jewels. So that's like one of the last upgrades I would ever recommend for somebody to do in this build. I recommend the Thread of Hope. I recommend the Jewel Cluster. Even the small Jewel Clusters are pretty good. This is what I'm trying to get at. I keep having a lot of people come to me with this one, and I'm just like, you didn't watch the video, you just copied the POB, and now look what happened. Now look what happened with the confusion. Oh no. So yeah, like I said, for AFK Blight, use this setup. For the cast and damage taken, Immortal Call, Frostwall, Bone Offering, and for mapping, you can use this one with a 21-23 Bone Offering because it's cheap. And this is the video about how you take I literally showed it from league start to this point, and how would somebody take it the final stretch? Well, I've explained they're at a point where they're AFKing T13 T ridiculous. Just max the build now. You're at the same point I am. Just start maxing the build out. Maybe go for this min-max where you get Flesh and Stone, Maim, and Enlighten. And if you feel like you've caught up to me and the upgrades don't make sense, then don't do anything and just wait for me to do something else. Wait for me to do some more, you know? If you're all caught up and you don't see a big jump between me and you, then chill, I guess. Or come up with your own way to min-max the build and then show me the cool items you've created. Either way, I overall think this was a good way to put it. I'm going to give a quick little minute to Elegant Hubris explanation for a lot of people struggling. I might even leave like a timestamp to this if I remember in the description. So, Elegant Hubris, what I recommend is you get an Elegant Hubris from trade. Yeah. You buy it, and then you put it in this jewel socket, or this jewel socket, or any jewel socket you want to, and it will change everything in the big circle. Change it, like dead. Weird nodes. Yours most likely will not be the same as mine. You will get a random one, and you will have to decide for yourself if you like it. So what I recommend is when you put it in, you see how your path like this? So let's say it changes this one to minion 80% damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points to get it, right? It's not very good. But if it gave you this point, Juggernaut, that you already take, and it changed it to 80% damage, that's only 2 points. That looks pretty good. So pretty much what I'm saying is when you put the jewel socket in, look for minion damage, minion life, chaos res, endurance charge on hit recently. Look for good nodes that you might want to take, and then decide, based on how many points it's going to take you to take it, if it's good. Okay. So what I like currently is 240% minion life. Before, when I was getting up to this point, I was using a 240% minion damage one, because damage, it's easily explained. I wanted damage, so I went damage. If you guys go whatever you need at the time, And this is just showing you, I'll give you another explanation of the Elegant Hubris real quick. So pretty much you get the jewel and yours is going to be different. And then if to get a different one from the one you have, you can either buy another one or you can Divine Orb. Up to you. But basically, to explain why an Elegant Hubris is so insane, you can get a 2.80% damage. Right here is 1.10%, 1.10%, 1.20. So this is 3 points for 40% minion damage, where I told you we could get it in 2, and it's double. It doesn't make any sense. I don't really know. The skill tree sucks for minions, whereas the Elegant Hubris is insane. So try to get a disgusting Elegant Hubris with tons of damage and tons of life and go crazy. The more nodes of that shit, the better, realistically. And as long as it's efficient, like 2 or 3 points, it's absolutely insane. Either way, I think that sums up the Elegant Hubris and what people need to do for that. This is a good video overall, I hope. I hope a lot of people now understand the direction and how to take the build and what we've done with it this season. I just tried to focus on the what we did instead of what it was. It's just what is. Okay, so now I'll spend the next part. I'll explain the boot. So along with all this other stuff that I've mentioned in the build, there's the boots. And this is ancient. I crafted boots to show that they can be better than Alberons already. So just a very quick, I didn't craft these actually, I bought them. They were cheap, like 140 C. So you have Alberons, and Alberons gives increased strength, and an extra zombie, and move speed and chaos res. This boot I got was strength, increased strength, life. So what you see here is, for me, it gives me 9 more strength, 95 life, 5.3% life regen, less armor, less physical damage reduction, more move speed, more cold res, less chaos res. So I was like, ooh, more strength, more life, look at my boot. So you don't need to do this, but you can. And then it's basically to show you how then on this boot you could get 35% move speed, you could get really good life, you could get a suffix, any suffix you want, 2 suffixes, one suffix, and you could get another prefix like crafting cannot be frozen, for example. If you had this cold res nut here, you could multi cannot be frozen move speed. It's pretty disgusting. So what normally I would want is like high strength, high increased strength, high move speed. Then you'd multi cannot be frozen and life, because who cares, they're basic, easy, and you wouldn't have an extra suffix. You'd use it on a multi. And so this is showing you how you could upgrade the boot, and not just upgrade, but like, you don't need to, but it's if you want to. And it's another way to get a little bit more strength out of the build. This is also not T1, so you could get more strength in this. It's just to show you that Alberons isn't the end-all be-all of the boot, and you can upgrade. On the rings, you can go all the res, chaos res, strength. You could try to get minion damage, bases. The belt, increased attributes, increased strength. Let me pull in my belt that I used before. I'll show you what I do for this. So I'd come in here, my other build. This is a shit belt that I bought again. It's not anything insane. It's actually kind of cool to keep these items still in the build so that it's obtainable. But anyways, you can see it's just increased attributes, life, and chaos res. This was like 1x, but look how much fucking strength it added. And the chaos res is pretty juicy, especially in this, showing you how just the belt I ended up using fits pretty good in the build. So I think this is a pretty good video showing people how to get the damage in the build. I recommend, like I said, this for the res for the minions. Their chaos res is screwed up. Oh yeah, I never covered when to add animate guardian. So actually, the point at which you add animate guardian is dependent on where you feel you are, like how rich you are, because you have to buy a 2123 animate guardian to put into your helmet so that it has the best chance of surviving. Technically you can get away with a 2120, but you're just going to end up buying a better gem anyways of 2123 later. So I just recommend getting the 2123, invest in it now, and then if it doesn't die, you've saved money. If it dies, you've wasted money, because when your animate guardian dies, you lose all of its gear. So yeah. I'll spend a little bit of time. So I mentioned these jewels. I'll just spend a little bit of time because I never included the small cluster jewels, and I should. So anyways, small cluster jewels. Let me just go to the main build now to explain basically like the things that are different. So Elegant Hubris, these 6 points are dedicated to getting 240% minion life, like I said, to get my zombies to 90,000 life. It's insane. The damage is only double, and that's with all of my Awaken Multistrike, Awaken Brutality, Empower 4, Awaken Melee Fizz, Impale, 21-23 Zombie. That's everything, right? Then I took out those jewels and I use Wall of Muscle. This is a method of getting strength and life in the build. You can see that this one node is equivalent to 37 strength in my build. It's pretty good. And then Enduring Composure gets me endurance charges when I've been hit recently. Okay. I used, oh yeah, also I got lucky, and this jewel has 1% reduced mana reserve, and this one has 1% reduced mana reserve, so that's how I'm getting my reduced mana reserves. I have it on this one too, which is life and lightning res. I do need the lightning res, so it's useful. And oh yeah, you can, as soon as you can afford it, you can fit in a Watcher's Eye with Chaos res. Just the one mod, Chaos res, while affected by Purity of Elements. It's only a few X. And then when you get more rich, when you're having trouble surviving on T13, T16, I recommend physical damage from hits taken as an element while affected by Purity of Elements, because this will help you. Just like the Enduring Composure, you will start to notice that your physical damage reduction is really shit, and so endurance charges, physical damage taken as fire. Let me show this. It's kind of funny. Where is it? I don't remember. Oh, here it goes. It shows you, look, you take 12% less because of the Watcher's Eye, so it multiplies it and it comes out as 88% as physical, which gives a 0.9 mitigate. It's so, look at this, the numbers. Taken 0.74, final 0.59, and then you have 26% less damage, physical damage taken from the Immortal Call buff. Look at those multipliers, dude. Okay, anyways, that's showing you what we've actually done with those few changes of using Immortal Call and using endurance charges and using the Watcher's Eye. We at one point were trying out Soul of Steel, but it's only 5%. It's meh. Could be better. This is 12% for just one mod on an item. It's fucking ridiculous. While the item still being like one of the best jewels in the game with 47. Watcher's Eyes are insane, guys. You probably want one if you aren't already using it, and you should get Corrupted Blood in the build anywhere on one of these jewels. I don't care which one you get it on. You should probably have this in the build by the time you fight Awakener, because Corrupted Blood is a really big problem in Awakener. I forgot to mention that. And is there anything else? Oh yeah, so the small cluster jewels, like I said, this is for endurance charges. This is for strength. You don't need them, it's if you want them. It was also a good way to get the 1% reduced mana reserve. I got the other one up here on the Thread of Hope. And like I said, this jewel down here, which is just for the 1% reduced mana reserve and lightning res and bonus life. So that's all the advice for this build, showing you how to go from, or how I recommend to go from league start to this point. The order, kind of, mostly, as much as I could. I did my best. And then, like, this is the end-all, be-all. So, like I said, don't copy the Flesh and Stone, Maim and Lighten thing, and don't copy where I put things, but you should probably somewhat copy this and maybe make, like, the Stone Golem Feeding Frenzy with, like, minion life to keep him alive if you're going to copy this. With the Feeding Frenzy, because he likes to die a lot. He, like in Blight, he goes off on his own and dies, even with the really high life that mine has. Let me show you. 66,000. So that's the overall, you know. I also found out a bug. So Animate Guardian, do you see how it's strength intelligence? So you see how it gains 4 levels in my build, 21 and 4. If you look here, my Spectre's gaining 5. So I found out that the +1 intelligence amulet that I'm using doesn't add 1 level to Animate Guardian. It's an intelligence skill gem. I don't know why it doesn't get 1 level. My specters get 1 level. My zombies get 1 level, but not my Animate Guardian. But either way, level 31 zombies, Pog U. That's the build overall. If there's any final questions or if anything I missed, I guess leave questions below of upgrade order. So I just focused on where to spend currency mostly, and why we made changes, like based on getting the jewel cluster, adding impale that way, not using impale until we finally got the jewel cluster. And I'm sure people even saw it as I added the jewel cluster and switched to impale. The damage increase wasn't actually insane. It was like, oh, okay, awesome. So it's good, but we need this jewel. Yes, guys, yes. I think that summed it up. We've been able to go back and edit our league start with this video. We were able to edit our endgame build guide video basically by recommending the changes, and then we were able to transition and show how to take that start all the way to this. I hope it helps a lot of people. I'm not sure. Throughout this, I constantly would stop recording and go, this fucking sucks. It's so hard to make this video. I feel like this is the hardest thing I've ever done, and I'm not even happy with it. And I said this yesterday when I was gonna make this video, that I'm not gonna be happy with it even at the end of recording it. But I think that's just the way it is, you know. It's always gonna be that way. It's a lot of information to cover, and I'm gonna I don't know, I just can't cover it all. Look, I forgot about the helm enchant. When do you get the helm enchant, Ethan? When do I get the glove? When do I already can see it. I can already see it. There's too much, man. There's too much to tell you the perfect order to get it all in. I can recommend the big general concepts like impale and when to use the thread of hope, and when to stop getting lots of the skill tree like this, when you stop using minion skills. So yeah, but trying to tell somebody when is right for them to do the Ami craft or the boot craft or that stuff, it's kind of like basically based on when you have the currency. And with the helm enchant, this helm enchant is really expensive, so I would say it's one of the last things you would do. I had all of my Awaken gems except for Awaken Multi before buying the helm enchant. So I already had Ray Zombie 2123, Awaken Brutality, Awaken Melee Fizz, and Power 4, all this shit before getting the helm enchant. I found it pretty low priority. Let me actually show. So, and I was using the attack speed helm before it, so you can even use the attack speed helm enchant if you don't. If the dread banner is too hard to get. Attack speed's pretty good, or the damage one is pretty good. But yeah, damage difference, fuck. 934 from 980. The chance to impale was 100 with the helm. Without, it's 94. So that's to show the helm enchant gets you the last 6% to have a 100% chance. That's what we do it for. It's not required, it's just really nice. You have to think that we use Rotten Claws for the 20%. That's what's really making the difference. Without it, look, we'd have 74, man. This last 6 isn't the end-all be-all, it's that 20. Right? Okay, so I just want to make that clear. The helm enchant isn't required, but it's pretty nice, and it's not required at all. Like, you don't need to go the Dread Banner one. You can go attack speed, you can go damage, or you could go for some random stuff like Pride reduced mana reserve, Flesh and Stone reduced mana reserve, Purity of Elements reduced mana reserve, Dread Banner reduced mana reserve. Maybe it'll fit Flesh and Stone in the build. I don't know. You might have to play with that a little bit. But this is the video. That's all I'm going to cover for this concept of prioritizing build upgrades, how to prioritize the build upgrades all the way to where we are. I think I did a good job. I think I've done it. I hope you guys liked it. I'll try to say again, the threshold for damage, or the damage for T13 Blight is the only one I will tell people because it's the only one I know. 3 million plus for 3 million plus for T13 plus. Also, at this point, when you're finally making these changes where you're getting like the Water's Eye and shit, and you're getting big expensive things that cost 7, 8, 10x, yeah, this is probably when you could afford to just slap in that Animate Guardian, like I'm saying, slap in the AG, get the 2123, then get the items for him. The Kingmaker's pretty cheap. I recommend the items that I have in my description below for the Animate Guardian. I have a whole video on it. This is all. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'm going to take this opportunity to thank my Patreon and YouTube members who financially support the channel. Thank you guys for all the support. I couldn't do this without you guys. Also, the 64 subs on Twitch. What the fuck? Insane support on Twitch. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!